I never thought silence could be a strategy until the night I watched my husband sleep through the vibration of his phone for the 6th time in an hour. It was past midnight. I was folding towels in the bedroom, the kind of mindless task you do when your brain won't let you sleep. Caleb had passed out around 10, still in his jeans, one arm thrown over his face. The phone sat on his nightstand, screen lighting up every few minutes like a tiny heartbeat. I wasn't the snooping type. Never had been. Trust was something we'd built over 15 years of marriage, through sleepless nights with a colicky baby, through lean years when we ate pasta 4 nights a week, through the kind of ordinary life that doesn't make good stories, but makes good memories. But the buzzing wouldn't stop. The 7th time it lit up, I glanced over. Just a reflex. The preview was short, sender name just initials I didn't recognize. She still doesn't know, right? I stared at those 5 words until the screen went dark again. Then I finished folding the towels, put them in the linen closet, and went to brush my teeth. My hands were steady. That's what I remember most. How steady my hands were. In the bathroom mirror, I looked the same as I had that morning. Same brown eyes. Same face I'd been washing for 38 years. But something behind those eyes had shifted, like furniture moved just slightly in a familiar room. You don't notice it right away, but you keep bumping into the edges. I didn't confront him that night, or the next morning, or the morning after that. Instead, I watched. Not in a paranoid way, not checking his phone or following him. Just watching the way you watch a storm build on the horizon. Noticing things I'd stopped noticing somewhere along the way. The way he'd started checking his reflection more. New cologne I hadn't bought him. How he'd laugh at his phone and then put it face down when I walked into the room. Small things. The kind of things that add up so slowly you don't realize you're doing math until the numbers stop making sense. Our marriage had been good. Not perfect, but good. Real. We'd built something together, though lately I'd been doing more of the building and he'd been doing more of the commenting. Little jokes about how I worked too much. Playful jabs about my busy schedule, said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. I ran a consulting business from home. It had started small, just me and a laptop at the kitchen table while Eli napped in his playpen. Over the years, it grew. Quietly. I wasn't flashy about it. Didn't talk about clients or contracts at dinner parties. Caleb knew I worked hard, but I don't think he knew the specifics. I never made a big deal about the numbers. He worked in sales. Did well enough. Made decent commission. We lived comfortably in a neighborhood where the houses all looked similar and everyone mowed their lawns on Saturdays. Our son Eli was 16, mostly interested in basketball and avoiding family dinners. Normal kid stuff. From the outside, we looked fine. From the inside, we'd been running on autopilot for longer than I wanted to admit. 3 weeks after the text message I didn't mention, Caleb started staying late at the office more often. Working dinners, he called them. I'd make a plate and leave it in the fridge. He'd come home after Eli was asleep, eat standing at the counter, and head straight to bed. My sister Zuri noticed before I said anything. She came over one Thursday with Thai food, and that look she gets when she's about to say something I won't want to hear. "You seem tired," she said, unpacking containers on my kitchen counter. "I am tired." "No, I mean tired. Like something's sitting on you." I handed her plates and didn't answer right away. Zuri and I had always been different. She was fire where I was water. She'd throw a drink in someone's face for looking at her wrong. I'd rather disappear than make a scene. But we understood each other in the way only sisters can. "Caleb's been distant," I finally said. "Distant how?" "Just distant. Busy with work. You know how it gets." She gave me a look that said she knew I was downplaying it, but she let it go. We ate pad thai and talked about her dating life and Eli's upcoming game. Normal sister things. But when she hugged me goodbye, she held on a little longer than usual. "If you need me," she said, "I'm here. For whatever." I believed her. The envelope appeared on a Tuesday morning. Caleb had left early. Said he had a breakfast meeting. I was making coffee when I noticed it on the kitchen table, propped against the fruit bowl like a greeting card. My name was on it. His handwriting. Inside were divorce papers. Neat. Professional. Already signed on his end. I stood there holding them, coffee pot still gurgling behind me, and felt nothing. That's the strange part. No tears, no shaking hands, no dramatic collapse. Just a weird floating sensation, like watching yourself in a movie where the sound has been turned off. He came home that evening at his normal time. Walked in like any other day, set his keys in the dish by the door, loosened his tie. You saw it, he said. Not a question. I saw it. He sat at the table. Gestured for me to sit too. I did. I can't do this anymore, Naya. His voice was calm. Reasonable. Like he was explaining why we should switch internet providers. Do what? Live in your shadow. I blinked. My shadow. You know what I mean. Everything's about your work, your schedule, your clients. I feel like a guest in my own life. I didn't realize you felt that way. Well, I do. I have for a while. The strange thing was he looked relieved. Like he'd been holding his breath and finally let it out. There was something else too. Something in his eyes I couldn't quite name. It looked almost like triumph. So this is what you want, I said. I think it's best. For both of us. And Eli. We'll figure it out. He's almost grown anyway. Almost grown. Our son was 16 and Caleb was calling him almost grown like he was a project we were wrapping up. Okay, I said. He looked surprised. Okay. If this is what you want, okay? Just like that. What do you want me to say, Caleb? You brought me divorce papers. You clearly made up your mind. He shifted in his chair. I think he'd expected a fight. Maybe tears. Some kind of reaction that would justify whatever story he'd been telling himself. There's one thing, he said. What's that? I want a clean break. You drop everything that's yours and mine, except the kids. And then we go our separate ways. The air in the kitchen changed. Even he seemed to feel it, because he added, I think that's fair, in a voice that suggested he knew it wasn't. Everything that's mine and yours, I repeated. The house. The accounts. I'm not trying to be cruel, Naya. I just want to start fresh. We both should. I looked at him for a long moment. Really looked at him. The man I'd married at 23. The father of my son. The person I'd built a life with or thought I had. Okay, I said again. That's when his expression changed. The relief deepened. He actually smiled. I'm glad you're being reasonable about this, he said. Reasonable. That was the word he chose. I didn't tell Zuri right away. I let 3 days pass, going through the motions. Making breakfast. Working. Picking up Eli from practice. At night, Caleb slept in the guest room. He hummed while he packed some of his things. Actually hummed. When I finally called Zuri, I barely got the words out before she was in her car. She arrived 20 minutes later, stormed into my living room, and said a string of words I won't repeat. He wants what? She demanded. Everything. He wants me to walk away from everything. And you said? I said okay. She stared at me like I'd spoken in another language. You said okay. Naya, please tell me you're joking. I'm not joking. He's trying to rob you blind and you just agreed? I didn't agree to anything officially. I just didn't argue. Why the hell not? I sat on the couch. She paced in front of me, all that fire I didn't have burning hot enough for both of us. Because arguing won't change anything, I said quietly. So you're just going to let him win? I didn't say that. She stopped pacing. Then what are you saying? I'm saying I'm tired, Zuri. I'm tired of fighting for someone who doesn't want to be fought for. If he wants out this badly, let him out. But everything you've worked for. I know what I've worked for. She sat next to me, her energy dimming to something softer. Sadder. He doesn't deserve this, she said. Doesn't deserve you making it easy. Maybe not. But I deserve peace. We sat there in silence. Outside, a neighbor was mowing their lawn. Normal sounds. The world continuing like nothing had changed, even though everything had. There's something else, isn't there? Zuri said. Not a question. I didn't answer right away. Naya, I think there's someone else. You think or you know? I saw a text. Weeks ago. I haven't looked since. And you didn't say anything? What was I supposed to say? I saw part of one message. Maybe I misunderstood. Or maybe you didn't want to know for sure. She was right. Some part of me hadn't wanted to confirm it. As long as I didn't know for certain, I could keep pretending. Keep functioning. Keep being reasonable. What are you going to do? She asked. I don't know yet. You need a lawyer. Like yesterday. I know. A good one. Someone who'll tear him apart. Zuri. I'm serious. He's trying to take advantage of you being nice. You can't let him. But I already hadn't I? By saying okay. By not fighting. By letting him think this would be easy. The thing nobody tells you about divorce is how ordinary the days feel. You'd expect everything to stop, for the world to acknowledge that your life is splitting in half. But it doesn't. You still have to buy groceries. Still have to make sure your kid has clean socks. Still have to show up. Eli knew something was wrong, but I hadn't told him the details yet. Just that his dad and I were working through some things. He nodded and went back to his phone. Teenagers are good at pretending not to notice what's right in front of them. Caleb moved out the following week. Not far, just an apartment across town. He took his clothes, his golf clubs, some furniture from the garage he'd been meaning to use someday. Left everything else. I'll get the rest later, he said on his way out. Once we finalized things. He was already talking about it like it was done. Like the hard part was over and now we just had to sign papers and move on. I watched him load his car from the kitchen window. He looked lighter somehow. Younger. A man shedding weight he'd been carrying. That night, alone in a house that felt too big, I finally let myself cry. Not loud, not dramatic. Just quiet tears while I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea I didn't drink. My phone rang. Zuri. You okay? I'm fine. Liar. I almost smiled. I will be fine. Did he really leave? Yeah. Good riddance. Zuri. I'm not going to pretend to be sad about this, Naya. He showed you who he is. Believe him. I wanted to argue, but I was too tired. I should go. Early morning tomorrow. You're still working? What else am I supposed to do? I don't know. Grieve? Break things? Something other than pretending everything's fine. I'm not pretending. Yes, you are. You've been pretending since the day he brought those papers home. Maybe before. She wasn't wrong. I'd gotten so good at smooth surfaces, at keeping things calm, at not making waves. Somewhere along the way I'd forgotten how to make noise when noise was needed. I'll call you tomorrow, I told her. You better. After we hung up, I walked through the house turning off lights. In Eli's room, I could hear him talking to friends through his headset, gaming. Normal teenage sounds. I was grateful he had that escape. In my own room, I stood in the doorway for a minute before going in. The bed looked enormous. I'd never minded sleeping alone before, back when Caleb traveled for work. But this felt different. This was permanent alone. I got ready for bed mechanically. Face washed, teeth brushed, alarm set. Slid under covers that smelled like the same laundry detergent I'd been using for years. Everything familiar. Everything different. Sleep didn't come easy, but it came eventually. And when I woke up the next morning, the sun was still rising. Coffee still tasted the same. The world kept turning. 1 week became 2. 2 became a month. Caleb's lawyer sent papers. I hired my own lawyer, a quiet woman named Patricia who listened more than she talked. She reviewed everything Caleb was proposing and then looked at me over her reading glasses. He's asking for a lot, she said carefully. I know. You understand you don't have to agree to any of this. We can fight. What would we win? What's rightfully yours? And what's that? She shuffled papers. That's what we need to establish. I'll need a complete picture of your finances. Assets, accounts, business holdings. Everything. I nodded. I'll get you what you need. Mrs. Sterling. Naya. I've been doing this a long time, and I've seen a lot of people try to be generous in divorce because they think it'll make things easier. It rarely does. It usually just means one person gets hurt worse. I appreciate the advice, but you're going to do what you're going to do. I'm going to do what feels right. She sighed, but didn't push. Get me those documents. We'll go from there. I spent that evening pulling files. Bank statements, business records, investment accounts. Things I'd organized meticulously over the years because that's what you do when you run a business. You keep good records. Looking at it all spread across my dining table, I felt something shift. Not anger exactly. Something colder. Clearer. Caleb thought he knew what he was walking away with. He thought he had the full picture. He didn't. There were things he'd never asked about. Accounts he didn't know existed. Investments I'd made quietly, carefully, over years of building something that was mine. Not because I was hiding anything, but because he'd never been interested enough to ask. And I'd never been the type to announce every move I made. I took pictures of everything and sent them to Patricia. Then I packed it all away again, neat and organized, and went to check on Eli. He was at his desk, headphones on, doing homework with YouTube playing in the background. The universal teenage study method. I knocked on his doorframe. He pulled one headphone off. Hey, Mom. How's homework? Fine. Boring. Need anything? I'm good. He looked at me then, really looked, and I saw something in his face that made my chest tight. He knew more than he was saying. Kids always do. Mom? Yeah. Is Dad coming back? The question sat between us. Simple words with complicated answers. I don't think so, honey. He nodded slowly. Put his headphone back on. Turned back to his screen. I stood there a moment longer, wanting to say something that would make it better. But there wasn't anything. Some things just hurt, and you have to let them hurt. Court date was set for 6 weeks out. Caleb seemed pleased with the timeline. Quick and clean, his lawyer kept saying. Like we were planning a business merger instead of ending a marriage. I saw him once during those weeks at Eli's basketball game. He sat on the opposite side of the gym. Waved when I came in. Casual. Friendly. Like we were acquaintances with no history. There was a woman with him. Younger, carefully dressed. She laughed at something he said and touched his arm. Zuri, who'd come to the game with me, saw it too. Is that her? She whispered. I don't know. Want me to go ask? No. Want me to accidentally spill my drink on her? Zuri. Just offering options. I watched Caleb with this woman who might have been the one texting him that night. Or might have been someone new. It didn't matter anymore. What mattered was the way he looked at her the way he used to look at me. Interested. Present. There. The game ended. Eli played well. We congratulated him separately, Caleb with his maybe girlfriend, me with my sister. Like we'd already mastered the choreography of divorced parents. Driving home, Zuri was uncharacteristically quiet. What? I finally asked. Nothing. You're never quiet when it's nothing. I'm just worried about you. I'm fine. You keep saying that. Because it's true. She looked out the window. You're too calm. It's not natural. What do you want me to do? Scream? Cry? Kia's car. Maybe? Something that shows you're human. I cry plenty. Just not in public. Not even to me. She was right. I'd been holding it together so tightly, not letting anyone see the cracks. Maybe because I was afraid if I started falling apart, I wouldn't know how to stop. I'm doing the best I can, I said quietly. I know. I just wish your best included letting people help you. You are helping. Just being here helps. She reached over and squeezed my hand. We drove the rest of the way listening to the radio, not talking, just being together. Sometimes that's enough. The night before court, I couldn't sleep. Lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through scenarios. What I'd say, what he'd say, how it would feel to sit across a courtroom and dissolve 15 years into legal terminology. Around 2 in the morning, I gave up and went downstairs. Made tea. Sat at the kitchen table in the dark. My phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. Ready for tomorrow? As ready as I'll be. Remember what we discussed. Stay calm. Answer clearly. Don't let emotion drive your responses. Got it. You're going to do fine. Get some rest. I put the phone down and sipped my tea. In the quiet house, I could hear the refrigerator humming, the ice maker dropping cubes. Normal sounds that felt strange at this hour. I thought about the woman I'd been when I married Caleb. 23, so sure that love was enough. That if you wanted something badly enough and worked hard enough, it would last. I thought about who I'd become. 38, building a business while raising a son while maintaining a marriage that had been dying so slowly I hadn't noticed until it was already gone. And I thought about who I'd be after tomorrow. Divorced. Single. Starting over. Funny thing was, that version didn't scare me as much as I expected. Maybe because I'd been living half-started over for months already. Maybe because I was tired of being scared. The tea went cold. I poured it out and went back to bed. This time, somehow, I slept. Morning came bright and sharp. I dressed carefully. Professional, but not harsh. Patricia had coached me on this too. Appearance matters in court, she'd said. You want to look put together without looking like you're trying too hard. I chose a navy dress, simple jewelry, minimal makeup. Looked at myself in the mirror and saw someone who looked capable. Strong. Ready. Zuri texted, kick his ass. Metaphorically. Legally. Whatever works. I smiled and texted back a thumbs up. The courthouse was downtown, all stone and glass and echoing hallways. Patricia met me outside. She looked over my outfit and nodded approval. How are you feeling? She asked. Like I want this to be over. It will be. One way or another. Remember what we talked about? I remember. Inside, the courtroom was smaller than I expected. Wood paneling, fluorescent lights, that particular smell of old paper and floor polish. Caleb was already there with his lawyer, a sharp-looking man in an expensive suit. Caleb had dressed up too. New suit I'd never seen. Power tie. He looked at me when I walked in. Gave a small nod. I didn't nod back. We sat on opposite sides. Patricia organized papers next to me, calm and methodical. Across the aisle, Caleb's lawyer did the same. 2 teams preparing for battle, except this wasn't a game anyone could win. The bailiff called us to rise. Everyone stood. And then Judge Rowan Hale walked in. I'd heard about Judge Hale. Patricia had mentioned the assignment with something that might have been approval in her voice. Fair but firm, she'd said. Doesn't miss details. Judge Hale was probably in their late 50s, with gray hair and an expression that gave away nothing. Moved with the kind of quiet authority that comes from years of hearing people's worst moments and somehow finding order in the chaos. Please be seated, Judge Hale said. Everyone sat. The room settled into waiting silence. Judge Hale looked at the papers in front of them. Adjusted reading glasses. Read for what felt like a long time. Finally looked up. We're here today regarding the dissolution of marriage between Caleb James Sterling and Nia Christine Sterling. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor, both lawyers said. Before we proceed with testimony, I need to review the asset division proposals that have been submitted. More paper shuffling. More reading. I tried to keep my breathing steady. Caleb shifted in his seat. I could see him from the corner of my eye, leg bouncing slightly under the table. Nervous energy he was trying to hide. Judge Hale read through everything. Made a few notes. Then looked up again, this time directly at Caleb. Mr. Sterling, according to these documents, you're requesting full ownership of the marital home, primary savings accounts, and several investment portfolios. Is that accurate? Caleb's lawyer stood. Yes, Your Honor. My client believes this division is equitable given the circumstances of the marriage. And those circumstances are? My client was the primary breadwinner throughout the marriage. The assets in question were built through his income and investments. I felt Patricia tense beside me slightly, but she didn't move. Judge Hale looked at me. Mrs. Sterling, you've agreed to these terms? Patricia stood. Your Honor, if I may. We've reviewed Mr. Sterling's proposal, and we have significant concerns about the accuracy of his asset claims. What kind of concerns? Concerns about what constitutes marital property and what does not. Caleb's lawyer jumped in. Your Honor, we've been clear about our position. The major assets were acquired and maintained by my client. I've read your position, Judge Hale said, voice level. I've also read Mrs. Sterling's financial disclosure. Something in the way Judge Hale said that made the air in the room change. Subtle, but definite. Your Honor, Caleb's lawyer continued, we believe Mrs. Sterling's disclosure is unnecessarily complicated. The division should be straightforward. Complicated how? She's included business assets that have no bearing on the marital estate. Judge Hale looked at Patricia. Counselor. Patricia stood fully now. Your Honor, my client included her complete financial picture as requested. If opposing counsel finds it complicated, perhaps that's because they didn't have the full picture to begin with. I saw Caleb lean toward his lawyer, whispering something. His lawyer's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his posture. Judge Hale set down the papers. Here's what I'm seeing. Mr. Sterling claims certain assets as wholly his own. Mrs. Sterling's disclosure suggests a more complicated division of property and earnings. Before we proceed, I need clarity. Your Honor, Caleb's lawyer tried. Judge Hale raised a hand. I'm not finished. Mrs. Sterling, can you explain the discrepancy between your husband's claim that he was the primary earner and these documents showing significant income from your business? This was it. The moment where everything I'd been quietly building came into the light. Patricia nodded to me. I stood. Your Honor, I run a consulting business. Have for 14 years. It started small and grew over time. I reinvested most of the profits back into the business, kept my overhead low, operated from home. My husband knew I worked, but we never discussed the specific numbers. Why not? He never asked. Caleb made a sound. His lawyer touched his arm. And the income from this business? Judge Hale asked. Is documented in my disclosure. Has been consistent for the past 8 years. Increased significantly in the last 3. How significantly? Patricia handed me a paper. I read the number out loud. It was more than double what Caleb made in his best year. The silence that followed felt thick. Judge Hale looked at Caleb. Mr. Sterling, were you aware of your wife's income? Caleb stood. I knew she worked, Your Honor. I didn't know the exact amounts. But you claim to be the primary breadwinner. I thought I was. You thought or you assumed? Caleb's jaw tightened. I assumed. Did you ever ask your wife about her income? We kept our finances mostly separate, Your Honor. We had a joint account for household expenses. Everything else was individual. Judge Hale made a note. And the assets you're claiming as solely yours, where did the funds for those come from? My income. My investments. Can you prove that? Caleb's lawyer stood again. Your Honor, my client maintained the investment accounts. They're in his name. Being in someone's name doesn't necessarily make them solely that person's property in a marriage, Judge Hale said. Especially when the other spouse was contributing to the household in other ways. Patricia spoke up. Your Honor, we'd like to submit additional documentation showing Mrs. Sterling's contribution to the household accounts over the years. She covered a significant portion of expenses while her husband made the investments he's now claiming as his own. More papers exchanged. More reading. I watched Caleb's face as the reality settled in. He'd thought this would be simple. Thought he was walking away with everything because I'd said okay. He'd mistaken my quiet for weakness. Judge Hale spent a long time reviewing everything. The courtroom stayed silent except for the sound of pages turning. Someone coughed. A phone buzzed and was quickly silenced. Finally, Judge Hale looked up. I'm seeing a pattern here that concerns me. Mr. Sterling, you entered this proceeding under the assumption that you had a clear right to the majority of marital assets. Is that fair to say? Yes, Your Honor. Based on being what you believed was the primary earner. Yes. And you requested that your wife walk away from property that, according to these documents, she helped fund. Caleb shifted. I didn't know she contributed that much. Did you ask? No. Why not? I assumed we were both contributing fairly. You assumed. But you didn't verify before filing for divorce and requesting the majority of assets. Caleb didn't answer. Judge Hale leaned back. Here's what troubles me about this case. One party made assumptions without doing due diligence. The other party allowed those assumptions to stand, perhaps hoping to avoid conflict. Now we're here trying to untangle 15 years of financial intertwining because both parties failed to communicate clearly. It stung, hearing it laid out like that. But it was true. However, Judge Hale continued, assumptions and poor communication don't negate legal rights. Mrs. Sterling, your business income, was any of it deposited into joint accounts? Some was, Your Honor, for household expenses. And the rest, kept in business accounts and personal accounts separate from our joint finances. So those funds would be considered separate property. That's our position, Your Honor, Patricia said. Judge Hale looked at Caleb's lawyer. Counselor, Your Honor, we'd argue that during a marriage, all income becomes marital property regardless of whose name is on the account. That's a broad interpretation. It's the standard in the state. Standard, yes. But there are exceptions, particularly when one spouse maintains clear separation of business and personal assets. Back and forth they went, legal language flying over my head. Patricia had explained most of this to me beforehand, but hearing it in real time was different. More clinical. Like watching surgeons discuss which way to cut. Caleb was getting agitated. I could see it in the way he kept whispering to his lawyer, more insistent each time. Judge Hale noticed too. Mr. Sterling, is there something you'd like to say? Caleb stood without his lawyer prompting him. Your Honor, I just think this is getting way more complicated than it needs to be. We both want to move on. Can't we just split things down the middle and be done? Split what down the middle? Everything. The house, the accounts, all of it. Including your wife's business? He hesitated. I meant the marital assets. Which are? The house. Our savings. The investments. Which, according to testimony, were partially funded by your wife's income that you weren't fully aware of. Caleb's expression hardened. I worked hard for 15 years, Your Honor. I provided for my family. I think I deserve half of what we built together. And your wife? What does she deserve? The question hung there. Caleb looked at me for the first time since we'd sat down. Really looked at me. I held his gaze, didn't look away. I think we both deserve a fresh start, he finally said. That's not what I asked. I don't know what you want me to say. I want you to tell me what you think is fair, Mr. Sterling. Not what you assumed was fair. Not what you hoped would be easy. What's actually fair given what you now know about your wife's financial contributions to this marriage? Caleb sat down. Didn't answer. Judge Hale pulled the papers closer. Read through them again, more slowly this time. I'm going to need time to review all of this more thoroughly, Judge Hale said. The asset picture here is more complex than either initial filing suggested. We're going to adjourn for today. Your Honor, Caleb's lawyer stood. My client was hoping for a resolution today. I'm sure he was. But hope doesn't determine how I rule. I'll review the documentation both parties have submitted and will reconvene in 2 weeks. At that time, I'll make my preliminary determination on asset division. The gavel came down. Sharp sound that made me flinch. Everyone stood as Judge Hale left. Then the courtroom relaxed into movement and murmured conversation. Patricia packed up her things. That went well. Did it? Better than well. Judge Hale sees through the assumptions. That's good for us. Across the room, Caleb was having what looked like a heated discussion with his lawyer. I couldn't hear the words, but I could read the body language. Frustration. Confusion. Maybe the beginning of understanding that this wasn't going to be as clean as he'd planned. Come on, Patricia said. Let's talk outside. We walked out into the hallway. Zuri was waiting on a bench, jumped up when she saw me. Well, continued for 2 weeks, I said. Is that good? Patricia answered. It's good. Judge wants to review everything properly. That means they're taking this seriously. And Caleb is realizing he might not get what he asked for. Zuri grinned. Good. We talked logistics for a few more minutes, then Patricia left. Zuri and I walked out of the courthouse into afternoon sun that felt too bright after the dim courtroom. How are you really? Zuri asked when we were alone. Tired. But okay? I thought about it. Yeah, I think okay. He looked like someone punched him. He looked surprised. Surprised he doesn't get to rob you blind? Surprised it's not as simple as he thought. We sat on a bench outside, watching people come and go. Lawyers in suits. Couples who looked like us, tired and sad, and trying to figure out how to unknot their lives. What happens now? Zuri asked. We wait. Judge reviews everything. Then we go back and find out how things get divided. Think you'll get what's yours? I don't know. Maybe. Or maybe we'll split it all and I'll just start over. Would that be so bad? I looked at her. Starting over? Yeah. No, I said slowly. I don't think it would be. And I meant it. Sitting there in the sun, tired but somehow lighter, I realized that whatever happened in court, I'd be okay. The life I'd built wasn't just the house or the accounts or the things Caleb wanted to divide up. It was the business I'd grown, the skills I'd developed, the knowledge that I could take care of myself and my son. Caleb could have the house if he wanted it, could have the joint accounts, could have whatever the judge decided was fair. I'd keep what mattered, and I'd rebuild everything else. 2 weeks felt like 2 days and 2 months at the same time. I worked, took Eli to practice, had dinner with Zuri. Normal life continuing while I waited to find out what my new normal would look like. Caleb texted once, "Can we talk before court?" I didn't respond. He texted again, "I think we can work this out without the judge." I showed Patricia. She said, "Up to you. But I'd recommend going through proper channels." I deleted both texts. The morning of the second hearing, I woke up before my alarm. Lay in bed watching dawn light creep across the ceiling. Felt strangely calm. Dressed in the same navy dress. Same simple jewelry. Same minimal makeup. Looked at myself in the mirror and saw someone I recognized. Someone I liked. At the courthouse, Patricia was waiting with a manila folder. New information? I asked. Just making sure we have everything organized. Caleb arrived with his lawyer. Didn't look at me this time. Kept his eyes forward, jaw set. Inside the courtroom, same seats. Same wood paneling. Same fluorescent lights. But everything felt different. Sharper somehow. More real. Judge Hale entered. We all stood and sat. I've reviewed all submitted documentation. Judge Hale began. I've also consulted case law relevant to separate property maintained during marriage. Before I announce my preliminary determination, is there anything either party wants to add? Caleb's lawyer stood. Your Honor, my client would like to propose a settlement. Go ahead. Mr. Sterling is willing to accept a 50-50 division of all marital assets, including the home and joint accounts, in exchange for Mrs. Sterling waiving any claim to his investment portfolios. Judge Hale looked at me. Mrs. Sterling? Patricia and I had discussed this possibility. She'd laid out what 50-50 would actually mean given how things were structured. I stood. Your Honor, I'd like to hear your determination first. Very well. Judge Hale pulled papers forward. Based on my review, here's what I've found. The marital home was purchased with funds from a joint account that both parties contributed to, though Mrs. Sterling's contributions were significantly higher than Mr. Sterling acknowledged. The investment portfolios Mr. Sterling claims as separate property were indeed maintained in his name, but were funded partially through household savings that Mrs. Sterling contributed to. Mrs. Sterling's business accounts and income are clearly documented as separate property maintained independently throughout the marriage. Caleb shifted in his seat. Judge Hale continued. Mr. Sterling, you entered this proceeding under the assumption that you had primary claim to marital assets. That assumption was based on incomplete information about your wife's income and contributions. Had you done proper due diligence before filing, you would have known the asset picture was substantially different than you believed. Your Honor, I'm not finished. Mrs. Sterling, you maintained separate finances in a way that protects your business assets. However, you also contributed significantly to marital expenses and assets without ensuring your husband understood the extent of those contributions. This lack of communication has created the mess we're now trying to clean up. Both of us properly scolded. Fair enough. Here's my preliminary determination. The marital home will be sold and proceeds split 60-40 in Mrs. Sterling's favor, reflecting her higher contribution to the down payment and mortgage. Joint savings accounts will be split 50-50. Mr. Sterling's investment portfolios will remain his property as they were maintained separately. However, Mrs. Sterling will receive compensation for the portion of household expenses she covered while Mr. Sterling built those investments. Mrs. Sterling's business and associated accounts remain her separate property. Any questions? Silence. Then Caleb's lawyer, Your Honor, that's significantly different from what my client requested. Your client requested assets based on inaccurate information. This determination reflects the actual financial picture. We'd like to request. Judge Hale raised a hand. This is my preliminary determination. Both parties have 2 weeks to respond. If you can't reach an agreement, we'll go to trial and I'll make my final ruling there. But I'll tell you now, if we go to trial, I'm going to look even more closely at Mr. Sterling's claim that he was unaware of his wife's income. And I'm going to ask some harder questions about whether this filing was made in good faith or in an attempt to take advantage of perceived weakness. The gavel came down again. This time it sounded final. Outside, Patricia smiled. Not big, just a small curve at the corner of her mouth. That was better than I expected, she said. What happens now? His lawyer will pressure him to settle based on the judge's determination. Going to trial won't improve his position, and he knows it. So it's over? Almost. Zuri was waiting again, practically vibrating with energy. Well, I told her. She actually hooped in the courthouse hallway, making several people turn and stare. Told you, she said. Told you justice would catch up. It's not about justice. Yes, it is. He tried to screw you over and it didn't work. Maybe she was right. Maybe it was about justice. Or maybe it was just about truth finally having space to exist. That night, Eli asked me about the court proceedings for the first time. Dad says you guys are working out the divorce stuff. We are. Is it bad? It's complicated. But we're figuring it out. Are you mad at him? I thought about that. No, I'm not mad. But he left. He did. Doesn't that make you angry? Sometimes. Mostly it just makes me sad. But that's okay. Sad is normal when things end. He nodded, processing. Mom? Yeah. Are you going to be okay? Like, money-wise and everything. My throat got tight. Yes, honey. We're going to be fine. You're sure? I'm sure. He hugged me then, quick and hard the way teenage boys do when they're trying not to show how much they care. then pulled away and went back to his room before I could get emotional. The next day, Caleb's lawyer called Patricia. They'd accepted the judge's determination. Wanted to move forward with settlement. It took 3 more weeks to finalize everything. Papers signed, accounts divided, house listed. All very civil and proper and final. I didn't see Caleb during any of it. Everything went through lawyers. The last paper I signed was the official divorce decree. Patricia handed it to me in her office on a Thursday afternoon. "How does it feel?" she asked. "Strange. Like closing a book I've been reading for 15 years. Good strange or bad strange? Just strange." She walked me out. At the door, she said, "You handled this with a lot of grace, Naya. Not everyone can do that." I didn't want to be the person who fell apart. There's no shame in falling apart. I know. But it felt important to stay whole. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, I bought a new house. Smaller than the marital home. Just enough space for Eli and me. Big windows, quiet street, garden in the back. I actually had time to plan now. Zuri helped me move in, complained about every box, ordered pizza, and christened the new place by opening wine on the back patio while we watched the sunset. "To new beginnings," she said, raising her glass. "To new beginnings." "You really okay?" she asked for the 100th time. "I really am. Not just saying it? Not just saying it." She studied my face. "You look different." "Different how?" "Lighter. Like you've been carrying something heavy and finally put it down." She was right. I had put something down. Not just the marriage, but the version of myself who stayed quiet to keep peace. Who said okay when she meant no. Who let assumptions stand rather than correct them. I heard through mutual friends that Caleb married the woman from the basketball game. Fast wedding, small ceremony. I felt nothing when I found out. Not anger, not sadness. Just a distant kind of acknowledgement that his life was continuing separate from mine. Eli adjusted better than I expected. Spent time with both of us, complained equally about both households. Normal kid stuff. My business kept growing. I hired help, expanded services, raised my rates. Started saying yes to opportunities I'd have passed on before because they seemed too bold or too risky. One evening, almost a year after the divorce, I was working in my home office when Eli knocked on the door. "Mom?" "Yeah. Can I ask you something?" "Always." He came in, sat in the chair across from my desk. Had that serious face he gets when he's thinking hard about something. "Do you regret it?" "Getting divorced." "That's a big question." "I know. But do you?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. "No," I said. "I regret how it happened. Regret that it hurt you. Regret that we couldn't figure out how to stay together. But I don't regret where it led." "Because you're happier now?" "Because I'm more myself now." He nodded like that made sense. "Dad seems happy too." "Good. I want him to be happy. Even after everything?" "Even after everything. People can hurt each other and still deserve happiness." "That's mature of you." I laughed. "When did you get so grown up?" "Around the time my parents split, and I had to figure out how to handle it." The honesty in his voice made my chest ache. "I'm sorry you had to grow up faster because of this." "I'm not. I think I learned stuff I needed to know." "Like what?" "Like how to be strong even when things are hard. Like how to let people go when they need to go. Like how to keep loving people even when they disappoint you." Wisdom from a 17-year-old. I didn't cry, but it was close. "You learned all that from watching me?" "From watching both of you. Dad taught me what not to do. You taught me how to handle it when things fall apart." After he left, I sat at my desk for a long time, not working, just thinking. About the woman I'd been who folded laundry at midnight and saw a text message that changed everything. About the woman who sat in a courtroom and refused to shrink herself small enough to fit someone else's assumptions. About the woman I was now, in a house I'd chosen, doing work I loved, raising a son who saw me as strong. Somewhere along the way, I'd stopped waiting for someone else to decide what I deserved. Stopped being okay with less because it was easier than asking for more. I thought about Caleb sometimes, but not with bitterness. Just with the kind of acceptance that comes when you realize someone wasn't bad or good, just human. And that sometimes humans hurt each other not because they mean to, but because they don't know how not to. The court hadn't given me justice or revenge. It had given me something better. It had given me clarity. Had made visible what had been invisible for too long. That I'd been building something all along. That silence could be strategy. That walking away doesn't mean you lost. Sometimes it means you knew your worth. The sun set on my garden. Tomorrow I'd plant something new. Maybe roses. Maybe vegetables. Something that would grow with patience and care and time. Just like everything else worth having. If you've ever felt overlooked, underestimated, or found yourself saying yes when you meant no, I hope this story resonated with you. Sometimes the quietest victories are the most powerful ones. Sometimes knowing your worth means letting go of what doesn't value you. And sometimes the best thing you can do is stay true to yourself, even when it's easier to shrink. If this story meant something to you, I'd love it if you'd like and subscribe. There are more stories coming about people finding their strength in unexpected places, and I'd be grateful to have you along for them.